Yeah, how's everybody doing today? So, wanted to make another recording here just to talk about a few more issues stemming from this whole debacle, uh, based on the incompetence of the Zanesville Police Department public servants and the public servants of Zanesville, Ohio, and Muskingum County. Basically, what these conspirators have done is because of these quota hire women that are too incompetent to take a complaint, and instead of just taking a complaint and going on about their business, they create situations that they can terrorize people and allow uh, their cohorts to terrorize people in their own homes for calls for service for nuisance noise. And um, based on their testimony, they get a kick out of the fact that they make people fear for their lives because they snickered and laughed when I asked them if they thought that I was in fear of my life when they were attacking me at my property. And um, it's amazing. It's amazing the things that women can do and get away with, especially these days. I mean, this has been going on for a while now, where women always get uh, the benefit of the doubt, or the um, how should I say? Well, they get excused. They get excused for their ridiculous behavior, um, and this is no different, other than the fact that it's extremely serious because of the fact that these incompetent women dispatchers that apparently aren't competent enough to be police officers, to actually go out and police the streets and stuff. They just sit behind a desk and answer phones like secretaries, and when they don't want to do their job, they create situations that they can terrorize people calling for service, and completely contradicting the established laws and uh, the directives that are set forth for the police department's law enforcement and the community. Um, they don't have the luxury of suspending state law or established laws. They are not the legislature. The executive branch is not the legislature, just like these mandates are not laws. They don't have the authority to mandate law. That goes against the process that was established for that created the checks and balances to prevent this kind of tyranny from happening, because there's a legislative process that bills have to go through before they can become law. You can't just have some dictator or tyrant say this is law because I say so. There's a process for that, and unfortunately, most Americans these days are just too stupid to realize this and uneducated, and quite frankly, they're just too distracted with all the nonsense going on these days, and you know, getting God knows what uh, injected into their bodies, and who knows what that's doing to their brains and their ability to think for themselves, and not to mention all the other toxins and poisons in our food supply and everything else. I mean, it's incredible if you actually pay attention. But most people would just ignore all that and say, "Oh, that's just conspiracy theory," and doctors know best, and politicians know best, and people that use their authority, usurp their authority, know best. I mean, this is just complete idiocracy. I mean, it's just the epitome of stupidity. But this is what happens here in places like Zanesville, Ohio, and Muskingum County, where women get to do whatever they want, and they can create situations where they can use their positions to terrorize people. And something else I wanted to address is back in June, when all of this happened and these incompetent women decided to do what they did. When I was attacked at my property, uh, and I was threatened, my life was threatened, my safety was threatened. Uh, they stole my property. When they came to my house, when they ambushed me in my garage and flew up into my driveway and treated me as if I was some kind of terrorist, even though all I did was call these worthless people and ask them to do their job like they're supposed to, the job that they're getting paid to do. They decided to not only threaten my life, but they actually stole my property. At that time, I had my handgun on me, and I was perfectly in my right. There was no issues with that other than the fact that I had it on me, and these bigots and usurpers stole that property and used this color of law action against me to not only justify their stealing of my property, but destroying my life and threatening my life and safety and also my health. Because of all of this, to be honest with you, going through the process of being attacked and being thrown in a cage like I'm some kind of animal just because I called these people and asked them to do their jobs, like I'm allowed to. It's well within my right to do that. There's nowhere that says that I'm not allowed to do that. But these people make ridiculous conditions and excuses for their malfeasance and their negligence. And unfortunately, most of the people here in Muskingum County and Zanesville, Ohio, don't pay attention, and so they get away with it. And they get emboldened when idiot voters that serve on juries side with the court because they have a bias to the court, because they feel that, well, they're serving the court, so therefore they have to side with the court. But this is a built-in bias. They're not supposed to serve the court. They're supposed to serve the public. It's in the public's interest. And if they would have paid attention to the testimony, especially to the cross-examination testimony where these incompetent women admitted to their negligence and their incompetence with a smile on their face. I mean, it's amazing. But yeah, so since June, they have stolen my property. Zanesville Police Department, to the best of my knowledge, still has it. Even though I have gifted this property to my sibling, and she has attempted to retrieve the property multiple times. It has now been basically 6 months. Just coming up on the cusp of 6 months, and they still won't release the property. Even though it had nothing to do with the case, it had nothing to do with anything at all. They stole the property because first of all, they didn't want to take it. They wanted to leave the gun unsecured on my property, I guess for someone else to steal it, because that's what incompetent law enforcement does, is they create safety concerns for the community, and they try to leave guns and weapons unsecured so that way they can be stolen, while I'm thrown in a cage, not able to secure my property or take care of my property because of their incompetence and because of their attacks and terroristic activities against me. So to prevent my property from being stolen and creating a risk for the community, I told them I didn't want them to just leave it out so it could be stolen, and so they decided to keep it. And so through this whole debacle, they have not only stolen my property, but through this whole debacle and their incompetence and unwillingness to just do their job and follow the law, they have infringed on the Second Amendment. They have created a situation in their favor to where they could terrorize me, and according to their legal system, which they've manipulated into their favor like tyrants would, which I've proven and can prove to anybody who is a doubter. I mean, plenty of you people in the comments are clearly unintelligent and don't pay attention. This is probably why things like this happen, is because people like you in the comments, not all, but most that I've seen, are just, wow, I tell you, some of the most brain dead people think that they know what they're talking about but just assume like they know me or they know the situation or what have you, and they just assume and they attack me probably because they wish they were as strong as I was. They wish that they could stand up and be a man like I am, but instead they're cowards and they hide behind their keyboards and they put little comments on my recordings to be pejorative and to be disparaging in a way to justify their ignorance. It is institutionalization for people that don't want to pay attention. That it could be Stockholm syndrome also, where they're just so used to it, they've become accustomed to it, and it's just now the norm. And these types of mental instabilities, these types of mental issues in people these days, this is what's leading to the downfall of our society, of our communities, of our country. And it really is a disgrace that people are so accepting of this low standard, lack of cooperation. It's a like a dictatorship, or it's like they're moving things into like a monarchy or something like that, where they're trying to do away with the Constitution, do away with our freedoms, do away with our rights, and just make us slaves. In fact, most people don't realize that when you submit to them and you submit to certain things, if you say you understand certain things, if there's words, it's all wordplay, and it would behoove all of you to do some research, learn some definitions of words. For example, prime example, the definition of the word person. If you look it up in the Ohio Revised Code, and if you look it up in the U.S. Code, the definition of person does not contain the word man or woman or living being. It talks about corporations. It talks about businesses. It talks about dead entities. It's very clear, but most of you are brainwashed. Most of you don't have or lack the capacity to think for yourself, and so you just go by what you're told, and you go along, and just to get along, because you don't want to ruffle any feathers. You don't want to stand up for your rights. God forbid. So this is just another example of tyranny at its, well, I wouldn't say finest, but it's tyranny nonetheless, where they're usurping their authority. They're destroying my property. They're stealing my property, threatening my life. As you witnessed, if any of you all listened to the conversations with Jordan Blanton, it's amazing. Right after my conversation with Don Mason about this whole situation and trying to get to the bottom of why they are so incompetent, here we have another attack out of the blue from someone who clearly isn't competent enough or capable of performing his lawful duties, and jump to conclusions in a manner that would allow him to attack me by ignoring pertinent information, by not performing a proper investigation, by not considering pertinent facts. This is just another example of this incompetence that I've been talking about, where they are not protecting the community from anything. They are a money machine. And if they can destroy people's lives and drag them through the courts and do God knows what to them, I mean, I've seen some heinous things when I was in the city jail and even in the county jail. The way some of these people are treated, it is, I can't even find a word strong enough to describe just the level of depravity that these public servants act in, and it's just amazing. But here we have, again, a situation where not only is the city public servants and law enforcement, quote unquote, incompetent, but they have the incompetent public servants at the county level in the county court, which most of the people here in Muskingum County support because they don't understand it. They don't realize the truth. They don't understand what these people are actually doing. But when you do your research, when you look up words, see, words have meaning. And when you realize that in a court or in a courtroom, there's a bench where someone sits up there in a black dress and makes decisions over other people's lives with clearly no conscience. And when you do your research, you realize that the word bench means the same thing as bank or bar. These three terms are synonymous. And when you start to analyze that and break that down, you start to realize that the courts are nothing but a bank. And they will, especially places like here, will stop at nothing to find reasons, no matter how arbitrary they are, to drag people through the system because they can profit off of it. And not to mention the fact that if anybody was investigating, they would see that there's motive. The county needs a new jail because they can't keep enough people. They can't stuff enough people in their dilapidated health hazard facility that is disgusting. When I was in there, there was times when raw sewage was backing up into the facility, into the floors. And so we had to sit there and sit basically in raw sewage. And then once these incompetent people figured out what was wrong with their dilapidated building, they then tried to force us to clean up this raw sewage with no protective equipment. Now, this is just in the last 6 months. So, I mean, you have to take things into consideration. You know, how serious are things out there if these public servants are doing this kind of thing, forcing people against their will to sit in raw sewage, to clean raw sewage without gloves, without proper disinfectants? It seems to me, in my experience, that they're doing things purposefully to get people sick. Now, it'd be my presumption, based on good reason and evidence, that they may be doing this sort of thing so that way they can make a bunch of people sick and then call it COVID and probably get COVID relief. So again, it all boils down to money and making money. And when people attack other people, when they feel like they have supreme authority over them and feel like they can do whatever they want, and when they're emboldened because they get away with taking away people's rights or threatening their life or property, they get emboldened and they do it even more. And so people don't get due process. People don't get the benefit of the doubt. They're not treated innocent until proven guilty. That's all a facade. Because if I was innocent until proven guilty, which it wasn't proven, it was assumed. But anyways, having been attacked, having been terrorized at my property, having guns put in my face, having my life threatened because I made a few phone calls and asked public servants to serve the public, follow the law, like state law, Ohio Revised Code 715.49, Divisions A and B. If you read it, it's pretty clear that it's the municipal corporation's responsibility to address noise issues, but they ignore that. They admitted to this in their testimony. Again, I'm reiterating, but they admitted to all this. They admitted to their negligence. They admitted to their incompetence and their unwillingness to even learn the laws that they're supposed to be governed by and to follow. Now, this is evidence of incompetence and negligence, extreme dereliction of duty, in a manner causing safety concerns and hazards in the community. They are actively causing harm to law-abiding citizens in the community and stealing their property and terrorizing those law-abiding citizens into submission. It is absurd. This sort of thing shouldn't be happening here. It wouldn't be happening here if we, the people, would stand up and say enough is enough. Push back a little on these public servants and say, you know what? We don't like all this, whatever you want to call it, overreach, government overreach. Uh, Government doesn't need to be in every aspect of my life. They don't need to know everything that I do. Not that I have anything to hide, but it's none of their business. I have a right to privacy, and there's no reason that I should be forced or compelled or coerced into revealing my private life and my private information. But that's what these people do because they're emboldened, because they get away with it, and they're not held accountable. They continue to do it. And I can't tell you how many people I had seen going through the court being completely destroyed by these people, being fear mongered into accepting whatever fate that these uh, uh, pettifogger shyster attorneys fabricate for these people just so they can profit off of it. Whether it's a public pretender, um, or a prosecutor, or a, dare I say, judge, the quote unquote, the, uh, the thing in the black dress that sits up there on the bank and makes decisions to profit off of. So it would behoove all of you to pay attention. Don't take my word for it. Of course, most of you people that are uneducated and hear these sorts of things, you quickly rush to judgment and start screaming conspiracy theory, because it really starts to shatter your reality. And I think most of you don't have the courage to face the truth, to learn the truth, to know the truth and let the truth set you free. Unfortunately, most of you are in bondage of your own choosing, because you would rather believe some falsehood or lie or propaganda and not even bother to do your own research, to think for yourself, to try to understand what truly is going on here and not just follow the narrative and believe the narrative. Because I firmly know that belief is the enemy of knowledge. In fact, when you say you believe something, I mean, in that word itself, in the middle of that word, is the word lie. So you can't have a belief without a lie. But knowledge is the key. Knowledge is the key to being free. And knowing and having knowledge of the truth is the absolute key to being free. Because once you know the truth, once you know who you are, they can't do anything to you. They can try, they can drag you through the mud, they can threaten your life, they can do all of these things, but ultimately it makes no difference. Because in the bigger picture, they have no power or authority over me. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I do that by choice because that's the civilized thing to do. So that way I'm not negatively affecting my neighbors and creating safety concerns in the community. That's a mature thing to do, to pay attention to not affect other people. Unfortunately, it seems, based on good reason and evidence, that the people here in Zanesville, Ohio, Muskingum County, most people here don't seem to really care about their neighbor. Most people here like to use chainsaws in the middle of the night and make all kinds of ridiculous noise, just like these local area business operators operating their heavy machinery. I guess they just figure, hey, when in Rome, right? So let's just add more noise to the pile and make it even louder. But it's just so absurd. I mean, if anybody would pay attention, it's pretty easy. All you got to do is listen. Just listen. Pay attention and you'll hear it. But to make excuses like, oh, it's it's traffic noise, it's the freeway, it's blah blah. It's all excuses. It's actually quieter over by the freeway than it is at my property because it's farther away from these business operators operating their heavy machinery and equipment and such. Uh, and it's amazing. But see, any of you would realize this if you actually uh, did something, if you thought for yourself. Like, for example, if you wanted to prove me wrong, hell, go out in the middle of the night to the Stave Company or to Casting Solutions or any of these businesses that operate 24/7, it seems, or pretty much damn near 24/7, uh, and take your own recording. Go out there and listen for yourself. If you're really interested to know the truth, why don't you go knock door to door and ask people along Sharon Avenue how aggravating and frustrating it is to have that extremely loud nuisance noise screaming through your house at all hours of the night when you're trying to sleep. Normal people uh, don't enjoy this sort of thing. That's why there's laws to prevent this sort of thing, or they're supposed to. But when you have public servants who refuse to follow the laws or are so incompetent that they can't even comprehend what the laws say to be able to then enforce them, that's a serious issue. But what's even more serious than that is the fact that these people are um, emboldened because the voters and people here in Zanesville, Ohio, Muskingum County give these people protection, even though they are terrorizing the community and causing harm to the community. These people that go out and vote and do these sorts of things and don't have a second thought when they hear about thin blue line and protecting the police. From what? Protecting them from law and order? Protecting them from accountability? I mean, that's all it is. They're not protecting them from anything. What the idea of protection for law enforcement is to make excuses and to lessen the accountability, to lower the standards. And that's when you have people like Jordan Blanton who can't even do a simple investigation, who, if he would have realized the concept of chain of custody, he never would have called me in the first place and threatened me or threatened to take my freedom, because he would have realized the truth. He would have come to a valid conclusion very quickly. And if anything, in that situation with Pizza Hut, if you all listen to the recordings and the conversations, that manager, Amanda, should have been arrested because she was the one that gave a counterfeit bill to a bank. It's her responsibility as a manager to track that stuff. And I have a feeling that, just a gut feeling, but it is my opinion that she may be the one that switched out the counterfeit bill to cover up her own incompetence or malfeasance. Or maybe she had access to counterfeit bills and maybe she's friends or a relative of one of these public servants, and they tried to fabricate another opportunity to attack me. And so when you boil it all down, here we've got another public servant that ignores their responsibility to the community and creates another safety concern for the community by condoning the fraud of that manager, Amanda, by supporting her in it, by thinking her that letting her think that it's okay to shirk her responsibilities as a manager for that business and ignore the fact that she was the one, in fact, that gave the counterfeit bill to the bank and to the company. She is the one responsible. So if anybody should have been arrested or charged or threatened in any way, shape, or form, it should have been her. But this is just another example where women can lie, cheat, and steal and make false accusations, and the system immediately jumps to attention and attacks the man in the situation, because they lack the capacity to think for themselves. They lack the competence to pay attention, to just perform a basic investigation. Maybe take 10 minutes to think about it, and then maybe he would have come to the same conclusions that I did very quickly, that the issue with chain of custody, how many people had access to that, and so on and so forth. But no, it's easier to just ignore these responsibilities and this process, this due process, and jump to conclusions and create a safety concern in the community. But until you people out there that vote, until you people in the community, whether it's Zanesville, Ohio, or Muskegon County, or any community across the country, or around the world for that matter, until the people stand up and say enough is enough, it's going to continue to get worse. This government outreach that we're seeing today, it's going to continue to get worse and worse and worse until we stand up and say enough is enough. No, we're not going to do that. No, that lacks all sense and logic. If any of you would read the research on some of these things, you would realize it yourself. But it's easier to just believe what you're told and do what you're told and go along and get along. I get it. Most fish don't want to swim against the school. Most fish want to, swim with the other fish. It's a sheep mentality. It's a lemming mentality. It's follow the others off the cliff and not realize what's going on until you're at the bottom of the cliff, smashed against the rocks. This is what most of us are being set up for. And it's unfortunate that most of you don't realize this. I get that some of you may be just so brainwashed and so institutionalized that you are not able to understand. The blind can't see. Hell, even in and things like the Bible, it talks about, forgive them for they know not what they do. And, it talks about situations where people are so brainwashed and deceived that they don't even realize the things that they're doing. They lack the capacity. They don't have the soul. They don't have the spirit to think for themselves, to understand truth. Maybe they sold their soul for a paycheck or a career, or who knows what these days. Regardless of the reasons, if you know people like this, you have an obligation to share the truth with these people. If you have the ability to think logically, like a few people in the comments have, and have left constructive comments, and I've had a few constructive conversations with, I appreciate you people. I appreciate the fact that there are some left, there's a remnant left that still is able to think for themselves and not just believe the hype, not just believe the propaganda. So with that, I just wanted to reiterate that, not only is this a direct assault on all of our rights, but this is a direct assault on the Second Amendment. There's talks right now about us possibly going to war. If the off chance that we happen to be invaded by a foreign power, these public servants that are infringing on the Second Amendment and taking away people's ability to defend themselves, God forbid any foreign power, troops or personnel show up on our soil, in a type of Red Dawn situation, God forbid. These actions infringing on the Second Amendment would prevent everyday Americans from being able to protect themselves, and it would allow the enemy, in that case, to have a much easier go at taking over the population. So, if that ever happened, these public servants would be guilty of treason because they would be helping the enemy, whether they realize it or not. Ignorance is no excuse of violating the law. And so it is extremely important that you people pay attention, because this is exactly what's going on these days. We have tyranny and treason right in our faces. And we are on the cusp of potential devastating situations that these politicians are steering our society into. So with that, I will just say that I pray for you all. I pray that you all have the understanding, and God gives you the understanding and the ability to think for yourselves and opens your eyes for you to see the truth. Because many of you are so deceived, it's a shame. It really is sad, and I pity you. I pity you people that attack me in the comments because you think that that's constructive. You think that you're doing something good for society. You're just sitting behind a keyboard acting like an idiot. Attacking people like me, a man like me that's willing to stand up and say enough is enough. I've had enough. I've had enough of this ridiculousness. It's nonsense. It's tyranny. Our forefathers, our country's history, we didn't go through all the things that we've gone through to get to this point to where we should just give it all up, give it all away, give it all up. You know, it's unconscionable what people are willing to do to protect their paychecks or their job, or that sort of thing, or to get goods and services, to be able to go to the grocery store, or to buy food, or to go out to a restaurant to eat. Nowadays there's things happening in our country that it's preventing everyday people from being able to do that, from being able to feed themselves, because they're not in compliance. Well, the last time there was talk about compliance was World War II and Nazi Germany, and we know the stories there. We could talk about that and argue about that and debate about that all we want, but regardless of the semantics, this is extreme government overreach, and we're letting them get away with it. Not me. I'm standing up. I've had enough. But for those of you who buy into it, for those of you who accept it, it's concerning to me, because you're the ones that allow the downfall of society and think that it's okay. Think that, oh, well, the worse it gets, well, maybe at some point Jesus will come back and save us all. But I hate to tell you, if that whole story is real, if it's true, I don't have faith at all that any God in that type of capacity would save anybody from themselves. We've gotten ourselves into this mess. We need to fix it. There is no savior going to come along and clean everything up for us, because that's just spoiled brat attitude. A spoiled brat that doesn't want to clean their toys, put their toys away and clean the room, because they're never forced to. Their parents never hold them to a standard. That's what we have going on these days. We've got grown people that never grew up, never matured mentally. Physically they're grown up, but mentally they have the mind of a child, and a spoiled child at that. And especially these women who get away with lying, cheating, and stealing and terrorizing people because they don't want to do their job. They can't just be a secretary and take a phone call. I can't help but think how different it would have been if these incompetent dispatchers would have just taken the complaint. It would have taken about 30 seconds, and then they could have gone on about their business. But instead, because of the games that they played, they dragged that whole situation out. over, I don't know how much time, but it was because of their actions. So it'll all get proven. I just encourage you people to think for yourselves, not believe what you're told, not just believe the first thing you hear, not just believe it because it was on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, or the TV said it. I don't care what you hear or who it comes from, even if it's a family member that you trust. I would still suggest that you double check everything so you can formulate your own opinions based on knowledge, not unhinged propaganda. So you all owe it to yourselves to know the truth and let the truth set you free. So with that being said, I will continue to pray for you all. And I hope that you all see the light. I hope that you all become the light and shine in those dark places and expose those creepy, crawly things, those cockroaches that are hiding in the dark spaces that need to be eradicated. So, God bless you all. Keep your head up and stay safe.